the weapons. Collective edge. Welcome to the Weapons Collective Edge. Today I'm going to go over some throwing knife books that I've had through the past. One here, there. These are throwing stars more. Here, that one, and that one. The first one I'm going to go with is this is Penandada Guide to Knife Throwing. This is Amante P. Martinez, and definitely a martial art. And if we go through, look at some of the pictures, he's got some stretching, methods of throwing, different techniques. This one's almost a shuriken style, where you're holding on with just the tab here. So if I grab one like that. So I think it was a little more based on some of the ideas of self-defense. Again, here we're seeing a stone and a metal disc. These aren't really going to stick, but they're going to be used for self-defense. And there's the regular shuriken, which in here it is a bagaka. Sorry about the pronunciation. So anyways, that first one I wanted to go over, just show that book. This one right here, go in here, this was from 1999, and I think it was a pretty decent book. Picture wise, as we're going to go through all the books, this one has the nicest actual photographs and how to hold knives. So I do enjoy the way that this was laid out. There usually is mostly just a lot of description on stuff, because nowadays when I'm doing YouTube, you can show exactly what it is. So that's what I'm finding. A lot of these books in reference back in the day, before there was any YouTube, before there was any internet, you had to reference from a book and go by a description. So this is the first one. Next book is actually the first book I ever owned. This is the Knife and Tomahawk Throwing by Harry McAvoy. This one here is from 1988, so that's pretty close to when I started getting into throwing. And this book here, if we go through it, has a lot of pictures of old types of throwings, which would be your full spin throwing. The knives are what they call more of a professional knife, so it is more, I say, modern. The blade is just a point where it doesn't look like a standard fighting knife. So another throwing one, a Bowie. This one looks more like a Bowie, but it's super thick in all these parts, and the handle is real smooth, and there's no actual physical wooden handles on it. So both styles were done, but if we go through, they show some stances, they show some grips, a blade grip on here. This one's a blade grip when there's no sharp edges, and they call it a professional style grip. The tomahawk, and they go into how to maybe build a target with just some I'd say regular wood, sawn wood, and the best way is like I've got here a stump. They stick the absolute best. If you go through this book, it goes through a lot of history. Show some Bowie knives here, a lot of the professional throwers, and it really gets in depth of what you had in history, art of professional. So you got a bunch of different types of people that used to throw like this, where you had, this one's Wheel of Death, and you had techniques that were done in a show, maybe a sideshow, a circus, stuff like that. And that was real popular back in those days. So this goes through a lot of that, tells people's names of who was famous back then, goes into the tomahawks. But overall, this guy used to hunt with them, 270-pound wild boar that he hunted. That's amazing. Then it gets into more of the throwing shurikens again, where it shows a couple pictures here. But Again, I state that these tend to be more description and less actual throw, because you know, you don't have, I'm stand here, I hold, I step, you know, I don't, it's hard to describe it in words versus being able to see it. And that's what I'm going to describe after we get done with the books. A little more description on the throwing styles. But that was this, Harry McAvoy. Excellent book, I think, personally, as far as just finding some good reference on history and the basics of description of how they were throwing. So the next book is going to be, this is the Gilheben Knife Throwing Guide. This one is nice because it used a lot of photographs. So if we start from the beginning here again, this one's from 1994. It's a thin book, but it's got full pictures. Got a picture of Gilheben there. Gets a little bit into the combat part also, but shows you how to make a target, which is a nice thing. You know, this will be a little more expensive than just the stump if you can get it, but you know, it is a target to be able to use. Hanging target. What's nice is it shows some decent grips, how to follow up with your leg. He's starting with his right leg forward, and when he finishes and throws, he's got his left leg forward, so he walks forward more in his step. Some styles actually like that. Shows his hand grip. And what I also like is they show you in this book the description of you're too far away, you're just right, and you're too close for your rotation type spins. So that is a nice feature that I liked in this book, that it really showed that right in pictures. But goes through, shows a couple grips, blade style throwing, his axe that he made that was sold, and throwing that. So same thing, shows the rotations, shows his follow through stepping. Not everybody does this method, so I stand still. I tend to throw right from here. I still have a lean occasionally, but I'm not stepping all the way through. And that's some nice examples of knives that he made. Not all throwers, obviously, but, and gets into the Rambo knife, some of the other cooler stuff. So some of the other things I've featured, the Highlander Bowie. But anyways, that was a decent book. I like the descriptions in this one. And if I go back to the last page, it's only 56 pages long, but it is a nice book because it has such the color pictures and be able to see some of the techniques a little clearer than just a description. Next one I've got is Knife Throwing, Sport, Survival, and Defense, Blackie Collins. I do believe this one is from, 1978. So this one is pretty old. It does have, again, some descriptions on how the knife flies, some grips, targets, basic shapes, and here telling different ranges. It's kind of neat with the, this one says combat knife, Mauser bayonet, ninja, and modified bayonet blade. Just some blade shapes. They're not necessarily those names, but just what they put on there. Using a spear, so lashing it onto a spear, and still throwing, but not knife throwing. And different methods of release and ways of holding it. So it was just kind of a neat little book. This one again, let's see if it's got page numbers here. Yeah, we're looking at 31 pages. So this one's pretty small. Few descriptions, has nice photographs, but on the slim side, so not as much detail. Last one I've got here is Combat Knife Throwing by Ralph Thorne. This one is one of the first books I've ever seen back when I started collecting and doing stuff. Let me see the date on this one. I believe this one is 2008. Was the no spin technique, releasing where the blade starts here, travels and sticks at multiple ranges without having to turn over per distance. So the difficult part of this book, the descriptions are in there, but picture wise we're talking about some hand-drawn pictures and mostly writing. So if you're looking for a lot of completely showing the motions, and you're not going to see it in this book. So that's what a lot of complaints I've seen online is there wasn't a lot of actual pictures and showing, you know, they're just hand drawn and very limited. But it still goes over the theory of that release of guiding your finger on the back side of a blade. So if we got here, we got this, and I'm releasing, and as I release I press on this and it flies off without spinning. And I've got a no spin video up that I can put a link to, and the spin techniques also. But that was Ralph Thorne, and I'll bring it back up. Ralph Thorne book. Not the greatest as far as, like I say, the pictures. I mean, it's still got the descriptions in it. What I do recommend on all of these books is using them as reference for reading, knowing some history, some background, and then going to videos and learning the techniques through that. Learning through seeing, I would recommend, is the best method to be able to know how to throw. If I'm going to hold my grip like this, I want to see that grip, and I want to see how it releases and somebody's hand decides at this point right here, I open my hand and it slides out. Or do they flick it? Do they snap their wrist or their elbow? Do they guide it with a finger? Do they guide it with a thumb? Do they have it on the middle index finger? You know, so you have those techniques. You can describe it, but when you see it in action, it's so much easier to understand how it works. So again, I'm going to go over a few of those things we talked about. The Ralph Thorne book, we got our finger on top and releasing that way. I'm standing very close, but it's just so we can stay in camera. Its effectiveness is I'm holding on here. I don't want to wrap these so that I can't, I usually put my fingers on this side and have it so that just that is on there. So when I release, it slides and I can have my finger touch it. My other fingers aren't pulling on it. So that would be on the more on the Ralph Thorne style of that one book. And now we'll do some shuriken. The next book here is Ninja Shuriken Throwing by Sid Campbell. This one here, if we go through this one, a lot of the pictures are more ninja stuff, you know, all the secretive things, the throwing stars, which I'll show you here. You got your basic throwing stars, 6-pointer, 4, and the straight shuriken. When we go through this, you know, it's the ninja stuff. And like I say, this one here, go back in the front here. This one was from 1984, so this book's a little older. And the ninja craze was really cool back in those days, different types of ninja stars. And it goes in a little more in depth of holding styles, a little more mystic, I want to say, but it's still cool. Still a cool book to have. Goes into a little more like techniques for distraction. And anyways, those are the different things that are in this book. I'm going to break up the other one here. This is the Ninja Star Art of the Shuriken Jitsu. Very similar. Katsumi Toda. Go through that. Got a little more history in it. All hand drawn, no pictures, but still has some cool pictures of, you know, hand drawn of the actual shurikens. Goes into a little more history on that also. But both are pretty cool if you're into the ninja stars. Ninja stars are nice. The one feature with the ninja star is multiple points. I don't have to know my distance. I can throw from any range as long as it can make it to the target. So, ninja stars. This is an excellent thing to start with when you don't know your ranges. You're still getting used to just the mechanics of throwing, because you're going to be able to be consistently sticking and not always worrying about, oh, it's falling out and I'm getting frustrated, I can't seem to get anything to stick. These will usually stick, you know, within three throws, and you've got something starting to stick, and then you just start sticking all the time, as long as you can, you know, hit your target. If I miss, you know, come way off the top, you know, you still got those. But if you hit the center of the target, boom, it should stick. That's what's great. So again, these two, a little more based on the Ninja Shuriken. Both decent books. Again, I state, you know, you're not going to learn all your mechanics on this. This is just a reference type of thing. So there's those two. So with the Shuriken being these straight ones, these had a technique of a lot of times my thumb would hold on to it across here and my middle finger would guide it. And this whole time I'm holding it so that it'll slide out of my hand and won't spin. That. Do another one here. One more here. So the technique is I'm holding on to it here. My whole finger is guiding it, and when I'm ready to release, it's sliding out through like that. It's almost precursor to what Ralph Thorne was teaching, and a technique that the spikes worked great for this. Just because they were small, you could use it from a short distance, and obviously it's not super deadly. It's going to cause pain, it's going to cause a wound, but these were poisoned a lot of times with the shuriken type books that you see, so that, you know, this was going to be your deadly kill, or whatever you want to say, in that these were poisoned. You hit their person, you ran away, and that guy died. He was an assassin. You know, ninja stuff is assassin stuff. So that's what I think was what these shurikens were doing. The underhand, you know, worked well also, but that style also, I'll show you a picture there, right there. The underhand style was just another method. If I pulled my shuriken and came out and threw, if I pulled my shuriken out of here, threw it more like the frisbee style, you know, the overhand style, it was a way that I could throw from any position, because these stick no matter how far away I am and what angle I'm throwing them at. So that was the feature of throwing stars. So the tomahawk, I've got a little one and a larger normal sized tomahawk. That was gone through in the Harry McAfoy book, and gives a little description on those. If I'm throwing here, that one has short distance that I'm throwing it, so it actually hits coming up here, so actually sticks in this case on the back side of the blade, because it has two sides to it. You've got your front normal blade and your back side. So at short distances, if it has that feature, you can do that. So with normal tomahawk, I'm going to go back further. You might be off of camera a little bit, but I'm going to throw this one. So in that case, when that one goes, there it is stuck, that has that rotation. So it's coming through the air, rotating through, has a lot of extra weight, and comes in and sticks. So again, Harry McAfoy on that book talked about the tomahawk. Most of the other books are based on throwing knives, besides the shuriken books, which are still a throwing object. But yeah, that was the throwing tomahawk. And the grip was usually right in here, and you just had that momentum weight of throwing. You're coming in there and throwing like that. Like I said, with that smaller one, sometimes you could utilize it and stick on the backside. The whole collection, as we can see, all the books, different types of throwing tomahawks, your throwing stars, different shaped throwing knives, smaller tomahawk, your little shurikens, and there's the books again. But again, I'd have to say all these books are just a reference book. Like I showed with a few of the throws, a few of the techniques, it's that feeling and seeing that really makes the difference, so that you can learn to throw. And I tried to throw a few techniques, I tried to throw a few different methods, and showing how each one has its little variation. In my other videos, I'll put the link to those, show you what distance makes, revolution, and how many revolutions it takes to get to a distance, stuff like that. But this was basically over the books, so that you could see what there was in reference back before YouTube. And check out some of those if you want to. I'll put some links to them, and maybe you'll get them, maybe you won't. Either way, just a good thing to have as a reference. But I wanted to show you that, and I will catch you later. We'll see you next time. Bye.